Hello and welcome to another edition of Chat It Up Sports. I'm your host, Greg Launard, and yeah, we are solo dolo today. The rest of the crew, unfortunately, busy. But you know what? That gives me an opportunity to do a little bit of my Word with G theme segments. I mean, shoot, we got on that top right corner. We can change it up a little bit. We can go Word with G here, Word with G there. We're having some fun. We're throwing it back to a couple segments tonight that we used to do a lot on the Word with G. Coming up in our next segment at about 8:30-ish or so, we'll have the man, the myth, the legend, the Sam Dusenbury Jr. of the twice award-nominated podcast, the Sam D Podcast. He'll join us to talk a lot of NBA, a little NFL as well, maybe a little college basketball. We might even dabble with that as well. We kind of throw that back to the DL segment on the Word with G. If you remember way back when, every single Wednesday for the second hour of the show, we would talk to him and he would join us to talk a lot of NBA, NFL, basically whatever was going on in the world of sports, just the large sports topics. But joining us to kick off the show, because I want to get y'all some guests in here since the boys couldn't be in here. We're going to talk to a man about one of our regional football teams. But before we do that, make sure you follow us, as it says right above my head here, at Chat It Up Sports, all over social media. Get it wherever you get your podcasts as well. Joining us now to kick off the show here on a Monday is the senior editor and staff writer for the Atlanta Falcons, host of Falcons Final Whistle as well, that podcast. And you can follow him on Twitter at Will McFadden. My very good friend, Mr. Will McFadden, throwing it back to our old Falcon days on the Word with G. Will, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, am I back in the birdcage, Greg?
You are in the birdcage.
We're in the birdcage right now. Love it. Yeah, really happy to be on with you. This is, I think, the first time on the podcast, but you know, we've talked forever, so excited to chat it up once again.
Yeah, hey, I see what you did there. Chat it up. Very slick, very clever, very sly. We like that. All right, so we're going to talk a little Falcons here. I know it's not football season anymore, but it always seemingly is football season, right? Like the football season never really sleeps. We've got the draft coming up in April. So this is sort of the post-Super Bowl sleeping metropolis type of time for the Atlanta Falcons and the NFL in general. But I still want to touch on some things because we didn't get a chance to have you on the podcast this year, as you alluded to. So I'm happy to have you back in the birdcage here. First and foremost, give me a little recap on your thoughts and feelings going into this season, and then how it played out with all the moves the Falcons made this offseason, obviously bringing in a guy like Kirk Cousins, year 2 of Drake London, year 3 of Kyle Pitts, and what should have been a solid offensive line. Obviously, year 2 of Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell continuing to grow, bringing some guys in the linebacker spot and along the defensive line, bringing in Matthew Judon. Like, there was a lot to be excited about in a very down NFC South. And unfortunately, they didn't end up winning it. So talk to me a little bit about your expectations coming in this year versus how they actually played out in reality.
Yeah, I mean, my expectations were high, Greg, which is, I feel like, you know, you and I have spoken mostly during the Arthur Smith era, but this was no different in my mind, right? It was a lot of players that they have been drafting offensively, like a lot of talent. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, what Drake really did kind of in year 2. I had high expectations for him going into year 3, and you know, he met those expectations. Bijan kind of hit a level that I frankly didn't even expect that he could be kind of that workhorse that he ultimately ended up becoming. So yeah, I thought that the addition of Kirk Cousins was really going to take an offense that had been solid, even with, you know, pretty kind of average at best quarterback play, that he was going to come in and just give a baseline floor of competency that was going to really unlock the rest of the offense. And then when you kind of throw in the additional surprises of a player like Darnell Mooney, what Ray McLeod was able to do kind of over the course of the season, Charlie Warner and his blocking, you know, I kind of, once I saw the individual pieces up close during training camp, I got really excited for what this offense could be. And then defensively, you mentioned the 2 moves. When Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons were brought in late in the camp process, right before the season, I was like, whew, this is a different level of talent that has been in here. What can Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates do on that back end? What can Matthew Judon do as kind of that top edge rusher? Now, I think Justin Simmons, you know, he didn't meet my sky high expectations, but he had a decent year, right? I don't think it's another all-pro type of year for him like he had in Denver, but he was pretty good. Matthew Judon obviously was disappointing if you're going to look at the sack totals, but I give him a lot of credit. He kind of stuck with it, and later on in the year, he did start seeing some of that production come along when Arnold Ebiketie and the rest of the pass rush started kind of like getting it together. But I don't need to rehash the way that the season played out. It was disappointing, given the way that they started 6-3, and then you kind of start sitting there and you're like, all right, just a few more wins and you're in. Now, those may not all come in the next 3 games. They may not come, quickly, but you like where you are given the head start that you gave yourself, and to see them kind of peter out and ultimately get the lead back very late there, but then not be able to finish against Washington in a game where there were a lot of bright spots for the future, but you couldn't get it done in the present. It did understandably leave, I think, a little bit of a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths, given the way that it was supposed to be. All right, like this is the year that you at least make that return to the playoffs, and they came up just a little bit short.
That they did, but what we got to see a little bit at the end of the year with the inconsistency, or the consistently inconsistent Kirk Cousins, and the noodle arm, and the, hey, maybe he's not right coming off the injury just yet. We got a chance to see young Michael Penix Jr. Give me your evaluation, your thought process when it comes to him. Obviously was in college for a while, dealt with some injuries. That's why he kind of extended his stay there in college, and obviously the COVID year and all that good stuff. So tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on him going into next season and beyond, because we've kind of been here before. You and I went through this with a guy named Desmond Ridder coming out of Cincinnati. How is this different, and what are your expectations of Penix moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a pure kind of like physical talent standpoint, night and day with Desmond Ridder. Like, the ball just zooms off of Michael Penix's hand, and in a way where, like, sometimes you're watching it back on tape and it seems to surprise him a little bit, where he's like throwing what should be almost a touch ball to the outside boundary, and it just kind of like keeps going on like an upward trajectory when it should just be like arcing. And it's almost like, well, damn, that ball didn't do what I wanted it to do. And that's like just the power that he has. Now, I expect that the touch and the feel and everything is going to come eventually, right? But there are throws that he makes that you're like, we'll live with whatever amount of patience we have to have for you to start dialing in maybe your off-speed pitch, because your fastball is 105 and you're just painting the corners. Like, it's so incredible the big time throws that he does make. And I'm even thinking back to like the very first play against Carolina, or his first completion when he throws to Darrell Hodge, who kind of makes like a back shoulder turning around catch. Like, there's nowhere but where he puts it that ball can go. And I think the Washington game sandwich there in the middle showcased the highs and the lows that you're probably still going to experience next year, because it will be his first season as a starter. At least that's the expectation right now. But you saw against Washington, obviously late in the game, like the cool, calm demeanor to make that final play. But really in the first half, we saw some misses. We saw some miscues. We saw some like throws that should have been maybe easier layups that he just flat out was inaccurate on. So I expect if there's going to be some like struggles for Michael Penix next year, it's going to be in that realm. It's going to be, oh man, your receiver had a step on the guy, but or maybe you wanted to layer it in there, but you threw a bullet and it went over the receiver and it kind of like bounced off near the safety somewhere, right? You don't want to miss high over the middle. So yeah, let's hope he doesn't do that too much. But that coupled with, and then in the Carolina game, like his mobility, which he didn't want to display. And I asked Raheem Morris actually going into that Carolina game, if Michael Penix's like desire to play within the pocket was something that was appealing to them. And he was like, heck yeah, man. Like this is a league where oftentimes you see mobile quarterbacks have to be kind of like reined in and trained to play from the pocket. Michael Penix is the opposite. He wants to play from in the pocket, but he does have the athleticism, as we saw in that touchdown run against Carolina, to get out and move and make plays. So I am sounding like a huge fanboy of Michael Penix. I can say off the field, like his demeanor is awesome. He's quiet. He keeps to himself. He's a little bit reserved. Obviously, on the field, he's a leader. Everybody has raved about that. So it's a good combination. Everything I've seen so far, physically, demeanor-wise, kind of his intelligence in picking up the playbook, it's been really impressive.
Yeah, we like that. A lot of good words there. A lot of good adjectives used about Michael Penix Jr. to describe him and his game. And he did seem to have a strong arm, that cool, calm demeanor. Obviously, being in college a little bit longer probably helped that as well. Helped him develop sort of that and dealing with adversity as he's had to grow as a passer and
No
as a
doubt.
player and a person as well. I think it's
Yeah.
really helped him, and I hope that they're able to utilize him moving forward with the weapons that they have, because this is kind of where I want to go next in terms of the weapons, because Drake London is kind of grown into that number one wide receiver. I think he took a nice step this year. Bijan is still a top 2, 3 running back in the league. He can kind of do everything for you. Now, Darnell Mooney obviously was a nice little surprise as well. And then there's Kyle Pitts. So you and I have had many discussions about Kyle Pitts and his sort of, I guess you could call it, consistently inconsistent, sort of like Kirk Cousins. What are your thoughts on the skill position players moving forward? What they have here, is it enough for Michael Penix to work with, for him to be successful from the offensive standpoint? And what do you do with Kyle Pitts moving forward? Because it was another really disappointing year.
Yeah, it was. And this is a year where, last year you could kind of, not this past season, but 2 seasons ago, you could kind of still point to some of the lingering injuries and things like that. But I saw Kyle Pitts in training camp. He looks great. I wrote a story on like Kyle Pitts can flourish in this offense because he frankly seemed like the number one read on a lot of the plays. I was like, okay, this is smart. You're almost having him operate as your de facto like X receiver or top read in a lot of these play designs, and you're going to get him the ball in space frequently. Cool, that works. And we did see that there was kind of like a 5-week stretch where Kyle Pitts had essentially like 85% of his yardage, I think, all year. And it kind of culminated with that 2-touchdown game in Tampa that the Falcons ultimately won in overtime. But after that, he like just dropped off. And I couldn't tell if that was a chemistry thing, if that was a lot of people here in Atlanta kind of latched onto his hustle because there was a play like late in the game. It may have been against Seattle or even Los Angeles, where he kind of like got the ball late but didn't finish off a route. Now, I do think too much was ultimately made about Kyle Pitts' kind of like work ethic because of a handful of plays like that. But it was clear that there was a disconnect between quarterback and receiver, and he just wasn't getting the looks. He was open at times, but they just weren't looking his way or throwing him the ball. And that is why I think the biggest kind of revelation to me so far this preseason or this offseason has been Michael Penix Jr. saying on Pro Football Talk Live that, he believes in Kyle Pitts, that he threw him that ball in Washington to kind of give him a chance. And if you're like his like 6th quarterback that he's worked with is finally ready to say, hey, you're my number one guy, because it's been Drake London. With Kirk Cousins, it was Darnell Mooney. Like every quarterback that has been here in Atlanta has kind of found another guy to work with. And Kyle Pitts just hasn't found like his running mate, his collaboration partner. And if Michael Penix Jr. is willing to be that for him, it'll be huge in his 5th year on this 5th year option. So yeah, like right now, it kind of feels like Kyle Pitts is that odd man out, that like black sheep in this Atlanta offense. It felt like he wasn't a great fit in that Arthur Smith scheme because of just how necessary the blocking was. And now it kind of feels like he's a little bit of a weird fit in this kind of Rams offense, Zach Robinson scheme, just because they utilize like the wide receivers and that versatility and all of that. So I don't know. He's really interesting. And it feels like the 4th year in a row that we're going into a season being like Kyle Pitts is in the spotlight and like a little bit of an X factor. I don't know what to expect, Greg.
Yeah, it's hard to, know what to expect at this point, because again, he's been so inconsistent with his play and, the different quarterbacks, and he was really good with Matt Ryan. So you're thinking, okay, maybe he's going to be really good with a, competent quarterback in Kirk Cousins, a veteran guy who'll be able to get him to the football. And it just really hasn't panned out. And what you just said there about Michael Penix Jr. coming out and basically saying, hey, he's my number one guy. if I'm a Falcons fan, that sort of concerns me because my number one guy should be Drake London or should be Bijan Robinson. Like I don't feel like it should
Right.
be Kyle Pitts. Is that more of just a hey, I am still instilling confidence within you, or is that like I don't know about this.
No, I mean, I think that it wasn't so much like, hey, he's going to be my go-to guy. It was more just like when he's open, I got to get him the ball. So again, I think that that's more a reversion from what we have seen. And you mentioned Matt Ryan, like Kyle Pitts was a rookie. Matt Ryan was as established as a player can be in a city. And so the dynamic there is you got to be here when I tell you to be here. And Matt Ryan is that type of quarterback. He's very precise. He wants like everybody to be on the exact same page. And he is the one who is writing that page. He's the author of that page. So that was probably a good scenario for Kyle Pitts to be in. Since then, he has not had, I think, that bona fide, look at me, I am the captain now type of player in the huddle. Kirk Cousins brought that, but then with that, Kirk Cousins kind of chose to go away from Kyle Pitts a little bit. So I think that this is, just a young quarterback saying, hey, let's keep everybody here. Let's keep everybody rowing in the same direction. If he's open, I'm going to get it to you. But obviously saying one thing in January and doing something in September and October is a totally different thing.
All right, let's talk about the head coach now. First year for Raheem Morris as the head coach in Atlanta. Give me your thoughts on him. How would you grade his performance this year overall as a head coach? I know they obviously didn't live up to expectations. I know there were some good moments, but there was also some bad moments. So give me your thoughts on him in year one, and what is your confidence level that he is the man for the job moving forward?
Yeah, this is something where when you saw the 6-3 start, I was kind of like, all right, that's why he is here. It's a collection of players and you're here to kind of like unlock them, make them feel good. There were different, just like mojos, I guess, around training camp a little bit. Like Drake London was a player who I think felt a little bit more freedom to express himself, to be more of himself out there on the field. And we saw a lot of like gestures and like celebrations after first downs and big catches. So that's Raheem, is he is a player's coach. He is going to want these guys feeling good, playing good, and then really kind of being that CEO behind the scenes. I think his job as the CEO, as the season went along, kind of altered a little bit because of some of the defensive struggles, particularly in the pass rush, that manifested themselves kind of before the bye week. And so you heard kind of defensive coordinator Jimmy Lake and some of the players saying that during the bye week, Raheem Morris kind of really helped get under the hood a little bit and diagnose some of the defensive situations that weren't working the way that they had hoped. And he never took over defensive play calling, but I do think he had a little bit more of an eye and a hand on that side of the ball after the bye week. Now he's got Jeff Ulbrich in here, which is going to allow him to really be kind of like the coach that his unique skill set in this league is both an offensive and a defensive oriented coach for many years in this league, allows him to be like that. That is why you don't want Raheem Morris to have to look very closely at one side of the ball or the other, because his strength is doing both. And so I do think he had kind of a little bit of a hard first year to navigate. The Kirk Cousins situation and the Michael Penix draft pick, like that was a weird dynamic to have to maneuver throughout the season. But when they had to make that decision, they were decisive about it. They did it Tuesday night after the Monday night game. They didn't really waste any time. They didn't make Kirk Cousins get up there and talk to the media and then kind of do it as a Friday news dump. They were decisive. He did hold players accountable in press conferences. Like, he said multiple times, look, we're not getting it done, right? This group didn't get it done. That Carolina game, the finish, like he was pretty frank and seemed pretty pissed off about the defensive performance. Then you saw Jimmy Lake get fired. So yeah, I kind of think that he's had his miscues, right? The Washington game, the timeouts, like that drew a lot of attention, and rightfully so, but he's kind of done the right things that a head coach should do behind the scenes. Now the game management stuff, you got to learn from those, and you really can't tell if they learn until they get in that situation again. So time will tell if they respond differently, but everything kind of behind the scenes and to the media, like I think he's done what I would want a coach to do in those moments.
All right, so the Atlanta Falcons, they have the 15th overall pick. I didn't mention this off the top because I know it's painful for you and all the Falcon fans out there that are listening, but it's the 7th year in a row that they haven't made the playoffs.
It's tough.
That is not a good stat that I wish I'm happy to be uttering. I'm not happy to have to utter that sentiment towards you guys and that fact. But the 15th overall pick, there are 30 guys that are going to be free agents, impending free agents going into this offseason. Obviously, there's some more notable ones than others. But before we talk about the draft pick coming up in April, which of the free agents are you most concerned about? Because again, there's a decent amount of them, and there's a couple there that are impact guys. Who's the most impactful, and who do you think that they have to make sure that they bring back? Because I know they don't have a ton of money to spend.
Yeah, they definitely don't have a lot at this point in time. There's a way to get a little bit more, but for me right now, the number one guy on the in-house list that you'd want to keep in the fold would be Drew Dahlman. And I know that some people could look at, like, technically Justin Simmons, right, is a free agent. Matthew Judon is a free agent, those guys. But I look at Drew Dahlman and I look at, by extension, this offensive line. Like, they are such a force and have been for a while now, that when you're finally getting to a period where you feel like, all right, our offense can be the defining unit for this team and something we can lean on, I just don't want to, like, pull a Jenga piece from that tower quite yet. I'd like to go into a season with true continuity on offense, right? You're not changing your offensive coordinator. You're not changing your quarterback. You're not changing, you're not adding another big piece and you're trying to flesh out this kind of like skill position group. You're going in saying, we know who everybody is and the role that they're going to play. And right now it is just about fine tuning it. And it is just muscle memory so we can execute at a high level. So Drew Dahlman, for that reason, I would love to bring him back. And then another player would be Mike Hughes defensively. Like, I think that you mentioned the lack of kind of financial resources that they will have. If you can get Mike Hughes back here on a relatively reasonable deal, maybe it's a 2-year deal for, I don't know, $7 million. Like, that to me would be kind of a win, because you can't necessarily fill every hole that you have or anticipate having with like a significant upgrade given the financial situation you're in. But when Mike Hughes was out there, he proved like to be more than, capable of playing opposite AJ Terrell with a decent secondary. Like, that unit was not like a huge detriment to Atlanta this year. In a lot of ways, it was a strength. So I like those would be the top two in-house guys on my list: Drew Dahlman and Mike Hughes.
All right, let's quickly talk about the draft. The 15th overall pick. I believe, if I read it correctly, there's only 4 picks that the Atlanta Falcons have in five
Yeah.
picks in this upcoming draft. They're at number 15. Give me your thoughts on what you would like to see them do with that 15th overall pick. And outside of, I mean, I know this is the low-hanging fruit. Like, I wanted to ask you, like, hey, what do the Falcons need to focus on when it comes to the draft and free agency and stuff like that? But I feel like it's deathly obvious. I think if we've been talking about this for a long time, it's, hey, where's the pass rush at? Can we get a pass rush? Hey, one time pass rush, anybody? Hey, pass rush, anybody? So give me your thoughts on the 15th overall pick. I've seen some interesting names. I've seen our boy here in Tennessee with James Pierce Jr. I've also seen Malachi Starks as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, how many times, Greg, have you and I been talking around this time of year, and it's just like, pass rush, go get a pass rusher, let's do it. And yet here we are. But I do feel like, God, this is such deja vu of being like, it's got to be either a pass rusher or like a corner, right? And the running joke here kind of in Atlanta is it's going to be a wide receiver, running back, or what have you. I don't think that's going to happen. It's been hard to tell. Like, I had to go to our own comms staff to guarantee that we have 5 picks, right? Because you see 4 out there a lot. The difference is, and I'm curious to see when this actually takes effect, but the Taylor Heineke trade to the Chargers for a conditional 6th-round pick, he didn't hit that playing time. So that's the 7th-round pick that has kind of been like the missing 7th-round pick for a lot of people, but that's 5 picks, right? So you've got the 1st, 2nd, 4th, and then 2 7ths. That's not a ton to work with for a defense that you want to add a few pieces to. So could they trade back? Potentially. Like, that's something Terry Fontenot said in his postseason press conference. Like, they would explore that opportunity, and they're not opposed to picking up more draft capital. That being said, at 15, if they're going to stick and pick, I like any of these kind of defensive linemen, edge rushers, what have you. I think I like Michael Williams a little bit more than Jalen Walker, just specifically for like what he brings to this defense. Jalen Walker this past year played a little bit more of that like inside linebacker, second level off ball player who then blitzed and did some unique things. They already have Caden Ellis to do that, right? So I like Michael Williams as maybe a player to line up off the edge. James Pierce is kind of the one player that I've only watched like one game on. So could you give me a real quick 30-second, just here's what James Pierce brings to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk a little James Pierce. So coming into this season, he was projected as a guy, as a prospect that could potentially be a number one overall pick. He was supposed to have that high of a ceiling. And a lot of the times, I'll be honest, look, he got double teamed a lot. The rest of the defensive line for Tennessee was really, really good. They had like almost like line shift changes in hockey. It was really fun to see all the different guys that they could throw out there consistently. But for the most part, and by and large, there was mostly an APB for the whereabouts of James Pierce Jr. for most of the season. Now, I still think the ceiling is pretty high. But if I were you, if I were a Falcon fan, I would be a little bit concerned about this man not showing up in the midst of a season, like at all, not having any signature defining moments, like no Jadeveon Clowney, big game with the sack and the whole thing. Like there was no moment like that for James Pierce Jr. And for me as a Tennessee guy, that's what scares me about him going to the next level, because I didn't really see that signature game out of him. And I don't know if that would be the right fit for a guy like James Pierce Jr. It almost feels like he needs to go to a spot where there's already an established pass rush, and it's like, hey, there's not all the pressure is on him. Hey, we need you to contribute. We need you to get sacks. In your rookie year, we need at least 7 to 10 sacks. So to me, if he can find a landing spot, if somebody can take him that already has an established pass rush and you can add him to it, I think that would ideally be the best landing spot for him. I don't think that's Atlanta.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you're describing the Falcons there. So, yeah, but like if it's not, maybe like Shamar Stewart would make sense too for Atlanta there at 15. But after them, I feel like there's a big group that belongs in kind of that second round, late first round. So that is where, if you're looking at a trade back scenario, it may make sense. You could probably have your cake and eat it too a little bit, because it seems like after Abdul Carter, right, and then after the two Georgia guys and maybe Shamar Stewart, you then hit a really big second tier of players. And whether it's Mike Green in the second round or the end of the first, or, James Pierce Jr., right? Like any of those guys could make sense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, my last one for you. Speaking of trading and things along those lines, I was reading something on Falcons Wire, and they had mentioned potentially a trade for, or maybe not even a trade. Maybe it would just be, I think it would be a signing. I apologize. I misspoke there. In free agency, potentially Eagles Pro Bowl edge rusher Josh Sweat. Talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on the potential to bring him in and how big that would be for the Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a player who, like, we're talking about these top draft picks, right? Like, he's got that pedigree. He is somebody who is very, very productive in college, and he's been a decent pro so far, right? So like that, it makes a lot of sense. Again, I just kind of come back to financially, like you're losing. We talked about 30 free agents. That's a lot of shoes to fill. And so is this going to be the year where you go out and you get a high priced, notable free agent? Maybe not. Right. So I would not be shocked at all if you're seeing the Falcons kind of prioritize a couple of their in-house guys. They've maybe been working, throughout the season on talking what that would look like. And then going and almost doing what they did in like 2022, that offseason, with like Deron Harmon and some of those like lower level veteran guys to come in here, because they've got a better core in place. Now it's more about plugging holes, adding some of that depth. So like Josh Sweat would definitely fill a need. He would fit, I think, what this defense is probably going to look like a little bit more. But if you could add a position or add a player of not equal caliber yet, but like the promise of a player like a Shamar Stewart, like a, Michael Williams, that to me is probably a better bet to see the Falcons go instead of going after a high priced position in free agency like edge rusher, because those are always overvalued. And Terry Fontenot has done a good job of avoiding that type of contract. So any of these big edge rushers, and we're coming out with a piece tomorrow on AtlantaFalcons.com, kind of looking at some of the free agent edge rush options. All of them feel like they're a little bit out of the Falcons price range because that's just the nature of the position in free agency.
That it is. All right, my last one for you, Will. You got a chance to get back and covering the team there really closely, obviously, for the Falcons, literally their organization this year. So who was the most interesting guy that you got a chance to cover or talk to or cut up with this past season from the Falcons?
Yeah, are you talking player or anybody in the building?
Let's keep it to a player,
okay.
Unless there's a coach. and I was gonna say, unless there was a coach that really stood out, but most likely a player.
Yeah, there are a few that come to mind.
I know I'm just kind of throwing this one at you. I did not put this in the pre-show notes.
No, I like it. It's a good question. I will say the locker room is different from when I was last covering the team full time in 2020. That was the pandemic year, so like 2019 when we were really in the locker room. A lot of great guys, like just really a lot of like happy-go-lucky, nice, laid-back, pretty chill dudes who are professionals and just go about their job. I would say Caden Ellis is like really just like a California cool, down to earth, like it wouldn't shock me at all if he just walked around in flip-flops around the facility like 24/7. And he does sometimes, right? Like all players have their like Jordan slides on that they just like to walk around on. But he is very like, I'm dressed for the beach at all times, backwards hat, t-shirt, shorts, flip-flops, like just walking around really laid back. And to see him then have the season that he did, where he was just a Swiss Army knife in the best possible way for Atlanta's defense, it was such a cool juxtaposition. Like we got a chance to talk to him during training camp on Falcons Final Whistle. And he just came in and was like as laid back as could be, as just a normal dude as possible, talking about his family Olympics. His wife was actually like getting surgery on I think her ACL or something that day that he told us about on the podcast. And we were like, what the heck, man? Like, why aren't you there with her? And then Raheem Morris found out about it and was like, go be with her, dude. And was like, got her out of the building that day, like excused him to go be, but he was like, nah, I'm here with the team. Like, we're all good. But it was just, he's like, his head is in the right place. His heart is in the right place. Even though I just told a story where, it'd feel like maybe it wasn't, but I promise you, he is looking out for everybody there. And he was just a really cool guy to get to know this year.
Yeah, he was. He had a really fantastic year, bringing him over, obviously, from the Saints. So that's always a good thing as well when you can steal from the Saints and pay yourself off with a nice player there like Caden Ellis.
Absolutely.
All right, Will, you got the podcast, the Final Whistle. Are you guys still doing that during the off season here, or is that more of a during the season type thing?
Yeah, so it's been something that has kept me busy the last month or so. We're kind of like taking a look at the podcast offerings for the Atlanta Falcons. Not any major changes. We will be having probably a podcast maybe tomorrow, maybe the next week. It might not be on the Final Whistle kind of umbrella, but if you just look at the Atlanta Falcons Podcast Network, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, that is where everything will be. Will be from the Combine. We're going to recap Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris's press conferences, and then talk to a slew of national media members who are just going to be stopping by the table. We're going to grab 10, 15 minutes with each of them and release those kind of as they come. So if it's not on Falcons Final Whistle, you can find everything under the Atlanta Falcons Podcast Network umbrella.
Beautiful. Love it. Follow him on Twitter as well, at Will McFadden, especially if you're in on the Falcons. He is all over it. Again, senior editor and staff writer for the Falcons and host of Falcons Final Whistle. It's been great being back in the birdcage with you, my friend. Thank you for taking the time, hanging out with us tonight. I know it's a little later than we normally do this, but your son got down to bed. Dad's done with the bedtime, and now go enjoy some time with your wife.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Greg. Anytime, man. Always happy to do it. Great catching up with you.
Yeah, you too. We'll do it again soon, probably around draft time.
Heck yeah.
All right, buddy. There he goes. Will McFadden right here on Chat It Up Sports on The Word with G. A little special segment here that we're doing. Good stuff from Will McFadden. Always enjoy chopping it up with him. And I know we have a lot of Falcon fans who listen and subscribe and pay attention to what we're doing here on Chat It Up Sports. So obviously Miggy couldn't be here. Miggy's our big resident Falcon fan, and obviously he'd have a lot of different things to get into and whatnot. But kind of a, again, sort of a disappointing, no, not sort of, definitely a disappointing season for the Atlanta Falcons when you finish 8-9 and you miss the playoffs for a 7th straight year. This team has a lot of room to grow, especially on the defense. If I'm a guy like Grady Jarrett, I'm getting a little upset because he's been there a very long time and they still have not been able to build around him on that defensive line, trying to throw some things at the wall with a guy like David Onyemata and Caden Ellis, and obviously drafting Troy Anderson and Arnold Ebiketie. Nothing has seemed to really stick. They've built up the back end a little bit, obviously with Jesse Bates, bringing in Justin Simmons. They've got AJ Terrell there. They've drafted some really good guys. So we'll see what happens. Nate Landman also had a nice year this last year. TQ Graham obviously is good, but the offense seems like it's going to be Michael Penix Jr.'s show. So we'll see what happens with him. They've obviously got the tandem there at running back with Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. Who knows what's going to happen with Kyle Pitts? The offensive line, as you heard, when it came to Will, he was talking about Drew Dahlman, and that's a guy that needs to be priority number one to bring back because you need some consistency along that offensive line. Jake Matthews isn't getting any younger, a first-round pick from 2014, so he's getting up there in age. What are they going to do to sort of fortify that offensive line? It'll help that they have a more mobile quarterback, a younger quarterback back there, in a guy like Michael Penix Jr. And then obviously we talked about it. You've got Drake London, a bona fide number one wide receiver in the building. Darnell Mooney, a really solid number two, a guy who proved who was sort of that number one-ish in Chicago, where they tried to force him to be a number one and realize that he ain't really that number one. He flourished in that number two role this year. So that was nice to see. They've got a guy like Rondale Moore coming back off of injury. We'll see if he adds anything. Ray McLeod was there. So they've got some pieces. They hopefully have the quarterback in place that they need to be able to kind of make the engine go on offense. And then obviously bringing in Jeff Ulbrich on the defensive side of the football was a big get for them coming over from New York. Big time defensive guy. But speaking of the Chicago Bears, our next guest on the show tonight is a former Chicago Bear fan, also a former New York Met fan, also a former Chicago Bull fan. Why do I keep saying former? Because he believes that fandom is a mental illness. So he has given up his fandom on everything, and he is just a fan of sports. Just enjoys taking it all in, enjoys cutting up about everything. I don't think I've ever seen or talked to somebody who is more contrarian than this next guest. He is a good friend of mine going back, 10 plus years at this point. Makes me feel old. I know it makes him feel old because he's older than I am. But he is the twice award-nominated podcast host, formerly of the Pick and Pop podcast, now the Sam D podcast, and the inventor of trash narratives, my good friend, Mr. Sam Dusenbury Jr. Sam D, what's up, baby?
The Word with G, are we back?
We're back, son.
The Word with DL, is it really back? Well, what a time to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
The DL segment is alive and well. As we're getting a little solo time here on the podcast tonight, it was interesting because I hit up the boys. Everybody was sort of radio silent for the most part this weekend. I was busy with the home softball, this weekend, obviously opening up our softball schedule at home. And I was really busy and entrenched with that. So I didn't really get a chance to interact with anybody. And then I sort of sent something out. I think it was like last night. And I didn't get any response until today. And it was like, hey, this, and then I'm busy. I'm not going to be able to make it, this, that, and the other thing. And so things fell apart really, really big time this morning. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to do a little solo Word with G segment here and get some guests on like we normally do back on ESPN Chattanooga and ESPN 1420 in Louisiana. I said, you know what, there's nobody better that I'd like to spend a half an hour to an hour with than my man Sam D. So your setup looks good there. And that's the new spot, right?
Yeah, this is the new spot. We got a similar to the old layout, but I just refined it a little bit, fine tuned it. Got some upgrade with some camera lenses and stuff like that, and some better lights. So investing in myself. Making sure that the money that I'm making, I'm able to reinvest it and make my setup as crispy and as smooth and as dope as it looks right now. So. Always a pleasure coming on with you. It's been a minute since we've had one of these types of segments, and you know, now that I haven't had it, it's not like I didn't enjoy it. But I was like, man, we really used to chop it up with G like every week for at least an hour and like talk about any and all things on the public airwaves. And that was a really good opportunity. You would come on my live stream sometimes as well, or my podcast as well. But having those weekly hits with you and being able to touch on not just football or basketball, sometimes baseball, sometimes world events, like the stuff that me and you got into, and hopefully so some of the people watching on the stream and on the podcast were able to tap in during those days. But like some of the stuff that we were able to actually cover and have transparent conversations about are extremely potent and extremely different than what you normally get on your standard sports talk platform. Like me and you talked about life, me and you talked about, things that were going on in the world and find a way to weave it back into sports, not just, stick to sports. We stuck to what was a relevant conversation. So always enjoy that time with you, my friend, and looking forward to tonight.
Yeah, me too. It's good to get back here. Like you said, it was every single week, and we didn't know how good we had it. And obviously the conversations on the air were awesome. I really enjoyed those, from life to social stuff that was going on, to sports and NBA and NFL and MLB. Like, we literally covered the gamut of everything.
Mhm.
But I really enjoyed getting a chance to, when we turned the mics off, just chopping up with you just on the phone.
Yeah.
Those were some of my favorite times, for you and I. And it was really a privilege to just be able to catch up with one of my best friends, on a weekly basis, with everything that's so crazy in the world, and how everybody's got going in so many different directions. It was really a privilege to be able to just sort of just hang out, chit chat, for an hour.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something, and I know people in the audience definitely can co-sign this. Like sometimes when you're having conversations with your friends, sometimes you could lose track of your friends, or you could just assume your friend is doing well, but you don't have that actual conversation to confirm if your friend is doing well or not doing well. And me and you have been there for each other through a myriad of, trying times and also in good times as well. And I think that's the part of friendship and brotherhood that, sadly is lacking a lot of, is that we just assume our people are good. We assume our friends are doing okay. And, you've checked in on me and I've checked in on you. And whether it was sports related or not, I want to see you win as a person, as a man, as someone that I know is genuine and is talented and cares about the product that you're putting out. So, those weekly conversations, like you said, it gave me a chance to, talk the gamut of sports with you, but also got to get a chance to catch up with you as a friend. How are you? Are you good out there? Because I know, for those who don't know, I know Greg from WFAN days back here on the East Coast in New York. And, I've followed his career as he's made pit stops in multiple markets and built his brand along the way. And seeing that journey, and luckily enough for me and an honor for me to be a part of that journey in whatever way possible, it's just an amazing thing to see everything that you've built at every stop, and continuing here with Chat Up Sports, but also just you, Greg Larnard, as a man, seeing the path and the trajectory that you're on. I'm more proud of that than anything else.
Thank you, dude. That really means a lot. I love hearing those things, and I feel the exact same with you. And obviously, the podcast is taking off for you and doing some big things. I always love seeing what you're posting up there, and the trash narratives and the timeline tea, and you've got a lot of things going for you. And obviously, the new setup. And I'll tell a quick story. Sam and I went on a trip one of these a couple years back to a broadcasting convention, and back in LA. And I can remember when we were traveling, and while we were hanging out at my friend Emily's house, and we were just kind of all chilling, like you would be on your iPad and you'd be looking up like the latest and greatest stuff to kind of like make your show better. Like, you are such a student of the game. Like, it wasn't just basketball where you kind of learn that from, because you were, those who don't know, Sam was a scout for his high school basketball team, and doing those type of things. And I do really respect the grind and the hustle and all that you put into your show and to everything that you do, making time to do it as well. I know it's tough with a full-time job, and I'm I'm, beginning to realize that as well, where, hey,
Hmm.
I got a lot of other things going on, but I still
Right.
got to make time for the podcast. And
For
it's,
sure.
it's
Yeah.
tough. And to post on social media and grab the clips, like you're a one-man team. At least I got, 4 other guys helping me out, and we can kind of, split up some duties and whatnot. But you're just a one-man band, man. I respect the grind and respect the hustle for sure.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. I think, a lot of people want to get into this space, and a lot of people, and with the technology we have, it's so much easier, right? Like your iPhone is good, your MacBook camera is good. You could get a mic off Amazon for the cheap. Like the barrier of entry from a cost standpoint is significantly lower than it used to be. So that everyone thinks they can get into this content space. But then once you realize the work you have to do, the fact that if you're a one-man band, you're doing at least 8 jobs. And that's without the help of AI and all that type of stuff. Like if you're legitimately producing your stuff, directing your stuff, editing your stuff, you're the host, you're the producer, you are, your audio engineer, you're all those things in one. Like you doing this stream right now, you're controlling every aspect of it. You're doing at least 5 jobs right now in controlling this stream. I don't think people understand that until they get into it and they do it. And then they have to create a schedule to where they continuously do it and then reply to the comments, post the clips, cut the clips, edit the clips, put captions on the clips, make sure your footage isn't copyrighted. Like it's all the little minutia things that, I did a video this morning about the All-Star game and the dunk contest and all that stuff. I recorded around 8 o'clock this morning. I couldn't get the video out, completed, done, fully edited, packaged with thumbnail, titles, all the fly stuff until about 2 p.m.
Damn.
Because I'm chopping, I'm editing, I gotta find a thumbnail. Is this thumbnail good? Is that thumbnail good? Which one is it? What's the title? Is this a good title? Is that a good title? What's the clips gonna be once I edit this? Like, so it's all this stuff you have to do, and I don't think people understand that grind until they get into it. So the fact that I've watched you grow and build your brand, I've been trying to do the same with mine. And if you really want it, you can do it. But understand, if you have a day job, if you have a family, if you have children, if you have a very active social life, this will pull from that. And it's going to become a crazy balance of trying to figure out, of prioritizing what's more important. Is hanging out with the fellas tonight more important than getting that clip up? Though those are real conversations you're going to have. My lady wanted date night. Can I do both? Can I edit this clip in time and still do date night? Or do I just need to forego the clip and make my lady happy and then figure out another time, maybe on my lunch break tomorrow, to get that clip out? Like it's those types of things where you have to juggle a lot of things. So I think that the content game is it's not oversaturated. It's just a lot of people trying it. But the people that last, the people like you and I and those that we know within this industry, you really got to want it and really got to love it to stick it out, because it is a hell of a grind.
All right, so I love this. I come into this segment with a game plan of like, hey, this is what I want to talk about. I texted it to you earlier, and yet here we are sitting here talking about the industry, talking about just going off book, sort of, and I love these conversations. I think they're really important conversations for people who are in this space or who want to get into this space, for them to listen to, because it is real talk. What we're talking about, this is not an easy thing to do. So for you, what do you love about it the most? What keeps you coming back and getting up so early to edit a video from 8 to 2 o'clock to make sure it's good, and having those internal conversations with yourself? Because I know you got a woman and you got to deal with that, and you got to worry about, hey, the friends and the job. And so what keeps you coming back? What is your thing?
I want to validate childhood D Sam D's dreams. And childhood D Sam D always felt like always talking about sports and giving his opinion about sports. He felt like his opinion should be validated. And I want to give every opportunity for youngin' D Sam D's opinions to be validated, even though I'm at a very big age and I'm nowhere near what I was as a youngin'. But it's the love that I had as a teenager, or even as a child, even talking about sports and listening to other people talk about sports and just getting people's opinions and fact checking and cross referencing. Like all that type of stuff is stuff that I still enjoy. Like last night or this weekend, getting into Twitter beefs, or not beefs, just back and forth about the slam dunk contest. Like that's peak adolescence for me. Like that's sitting in my boy's basement, back when, the Vince Carter took over the show 20 some years ago. Like that takes me back to those days and just, talking trash and I remember we can't curse on this, right?
Oh, go for it. Let it fly,
Yeah.
baby.
So talking shit to like the homies and just, going back and forth, and just having that type of camaraderie. I still enjoy that. I still, everyone can talk about barbershop talking, but barbershop talk is one thing. But when you're with your friends and you're able to rib your friends and get at your friends because this will bother him, like that type of stuff, like that's the stuff I really enjoy. And to be able to tap into just a little bit of that this past weekend on just the dunk contest, which is like the smallest of things in the grand scheme of things, but just getting that energy, getting that feeling of no. What I'm saying is right. Like I'm not wrong on this. Like, yeah, you can have your thought, you can have your opinion, but I'm right on this, and I'm now going to do the research to show you that I am absolutely right on this, and I'm going to make a 30-minute YouTube video about it. Like, so that's what it is for me. Like back in the day, it's just been, all right, we're just sitting here bullshitting, and then eventually the conversation will move on, and then that'll be it. Oh no, now to the point where I have my own camera, I have my own mic, I have my own system where if I could record a video, I could get it out in the same day. No. And I have an audience now of people that are like-minded, or at least will allow my opinion to be out there. Oh no, I'm getting all these thoughts out, and I'm going to do the research and show you the evidence and the proof that I'm not just talking. And I think that's something me and you have always talked about over our talks of the years, of just there's a difference between I'm a content creator, I'm a sports analyst, I'm a whatever, and just, I'm just a guy that likes to talk about sports. Like at the foundation, that's what it is. But then there's levels on top of it. Like you introduced me as a contrarian. I like to amend that. I'm a natural contrarian, because if there's a lot of fake contrarians that are making a lot of money by just going against the grain because that wild opinion gets views. I actually mean the stuff that I say, and that's a rarity in this industry, as me and you are very well aware of. But just being able to have this outlet I could get into back and forth and get into group chat conversations on the weekend, and Monday I could drop a video as evidence and proof in my perspective that I am actually right. So being able to do that, having the technology to be able to do that, having the wherewithal to get the knowledge necessary, to get the equipment necessary to be able to do that, that to me is what I'm validating young and these Sam D's like thoughts and wishes from like 20, 30 years ago.
I love it. Yeah, you are a natural contrarian as well. There's no real try. It's just how you view the world, and that's why I think you and I get along so well. I feel like I'm more, I don't want to say logically thinking, but like, I don't know what the right word is there. It's I don't know. We just view the world differently, sort of.
Yeah, but I think at times, and I think that this is why me and you click, is that you'll sometimes make me look at something differently. Like you'll break something down to me, and I'm like, okay, like in my natural contrarian brain, I always want to think opposite. Like G could tell me, well, Sam, we have to make a left. I'm like, well, how come we can't make a right? That's just naturally how my brain works. But then you might say, well, this is why we got to go left. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then, all right, yeah, I'm down with going left. Like, but naturally my instinct is, well, why do we have to go left? Why can't we just, I'm sure 3 rights to make a left. Like we could just do that. If there's a problem going left, just make 3 rights. The 3 rights is a left. But I think that's where it is. Like your POV can sometimes make me look at something and go, I never looked at it that way. And I would assume it's the same with you, where I can say something that on the surface could be wild and outside the box. But then after a while, after I break it down, like that to me is the key. You can say whatever you want. You can, scream content. You can scream into a microphone. You can get animated and get emotional and do all that type of stuff. But for someone like me, I ignore all of that because I want to know the reasoning behind that. I need to know the data you're basing it off of, the information, not necessarily deep analytics and all that type of stuff, but just give me the reasons why. And that's why the whole fandom is a mental illness thing. It's a real thing for me, because a fan can just scream because they're a fan of a team. Cool, I get it, you love your team, but why is your team good or why is your team bad? Take the emotion out of it. Tell me why. Our quarterback sucks. Well, why does he suck? Does he really suck? Is it the coordinator? Is it the O-line? Is it the scheme? Is it the coach? Is it the GM not putting the pieces around them? That's the stuff I'd rather get into than just the emotion of, I hate this team, my team sucks. Like, all right, well, yeah, as you mentioned, I used to be a Bears fan. That I could have made that my whole life of just, yeah, my team stinks, my team sucks. Great. Now what? Okay, well, let's get into the organization. Let's get into the ownership. Let's get into, you know, the lack of being able to draft with high picks and hit on those picks. Like, let's really break this thing down as to the why. My thing is always the why. You can give me the conclusion of, I don't like X, Y, and Z. Cool. Why? And that's what I go very hardcore with my content and trying to explain the why. LeBron ruined the dunk contest. That's emotional. I'm going to spend 30 minutes telling you why, and they're going to realize, oh, this has nothing to do with emotions because I'm giving you facts behind that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, speaking of the NBA, I wanted to kind of get into that and dig into that a little bit with you. And before we talk about the first half and then what to expect from the second half, and obviously I'm going to ask you about my Knicks and Knicks tape and how the group chats and the homies are feeling out there in the Big Apple. And well, you're not quite in the Big Apple anymore. You're back
Still
in my
close,
old
Tri-State.
grounds.
I'm way closer than the last time me and you spoke on your platform. I'm way closer.
That's true. That's true. You've inched back closer to it, but
Yeah.
you are still in my home state.
Yes, I am.
That I grew up in. So that's kind of cool. But you are a big NBA fan. Like that's your bread and butter. That's the thing that's, you know, first kind of got you into sports. Was basketball. You're a big basketball head. Obviously, that first podcast, the Pick and Pop podcast, was dope when it came to breaking down basketball. And it's still the same content with the CMD podcast and the Timeline T and all that. But you just break down other sports now, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the NBA, again, I know you're not a fan of any team at this particular moment or ever again, but who is your favorite team in the NBA to watch right now and why?
Wow. Okay. So
I don't think we've ever talked about this.
yeah. So, all right. I like varying styles, right? Like there's the narrative that today's NBA is all screens and pick and rolls. And while I think a few years ago that was the case, I don't feel as though that's the case now. Like I think the game is a lot of dribble handoff and off ball movement. Like we're getting back to some movement. So I like teams that do different things. So I have to start with Denver because of Nikola Jokic and just everything that he could do. And then pairing him with Russie. Russie is definitely a very polarizing player. A lot of people don't like him. But to see him and Jokic just kind of have this telekinesis thing going on where the two of them know where each other's going to be and they both kind of have the same idea. Like the IQ is off the charts for both. And I think to a certain degree, people expect that from Jokic, but they don't expect that from Westbrook. So to be able to see Westbrook be on the same page IQ-wise with Nikola Jokic, I think is a huge thing for me as a basketball fan / nerd to just kind of nerd out about. Is like, how did Jamal Murray get that 50 piece like a week or two ago? Oh, because Jokic was force feeding him, and then when Jokic rarely sat down or rarely had the ball in his hands, Russie was doing the same thing. Like they both knew it's Jamal Murray's night. We're going to do everything in our power to keep feeding Jamal Murray because he's going to go for a 50 burger. In years past, it would have just been Jokic and maybe a Reggie Jackson. You know, it just one of maybe Murray would have had 30 something, maybe 40. But getting that 50 burgers because he had another guy who can force feed him the rock that has that point guard brain in a Russell Westbrook. So I like watching Denver. I like watching OKC because of SGA, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, runaway favorite for the MVP if they don't give it to Jokic again. OKC is an interesting team to watch because it's the SGA show. And I kind of want to see if it ever develops into something more. And there's nothing wrong with it. Clearly, they're the number one seed in the Western Conference, tied for best record in the NBA, right? So there's nothing wrong. However, as we have seen just in the years of just watching ball, you see teams get to a certain level and then something else has to get them over the hump. And I don't know if this OKC team can win a championship with just SGA going for 50 pieces and just having, Jalen Williams go for 20 something and Chet, whenever he's healthy, maybe giving you a double. I just don't know what that next piece is to get them over the hump, but they're just exciting to watch because they're all young, they're all under contract, and you can literally watch another OKC nucleus like grow in real time and evolve in real time. We saw with KD, Westbrook, and Harden back in the day, and that team was able to get to the NBA Finals, and he played well, even though that they lost to the Heat and LeBron and them. But we really didn't see anything not too long after that. Like Harden was gone either the next year or the year after, and then that was kind of the beginning of the end. Even though Westbrook and Durant were still very good, it just wasn't what it was supposed to be if Harden would have stayed. Now we're getting to the point where they have SGA, they have Jalen Williams, and now they have Chet Holmgren, and Lou Dort is good, and they have some other pieces around there, but their big three right now is SGA, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren. Is that really a good enough big three to get them a chip? I don't think so, but they're a hell of fun to watch, and just the way to get up and down. SGA is an ISO machine. He's also a foul hunting machine. He's got a lot of heart in him. He likes to get to the line and get to the charity stripe and do all of that. But in terms of excitement, I think you got to go to the Western Conference, and the Eastern Conference is not a lot of excitement, to be quite honest. The Celtics kind of feel like they play up to their competition.
You shut your mouth.
About the Celtics?
That's bananas. When it comes, no, there's nobody in the East that's exciting to you. What about our big
Knicks
three?
What
about
our Knicks are not exciting.
Whoa.
They're not.
Karl Anthony Towns is fit like a glove.
Sure, because it's February and it's not May and June.
Oh,
it's cool now.
I know
he is a regular season merchant.
Oh man, damn! Like the meniscus tearing taskmaster, and he's wearing him into the ground.
How is OG doing?
He's doing well. He's just getting some rest over
the
break.
You sure
here.
It's just rest?
He is going to be
It's starting. It starts. It's always close to the All-Star break, into the second half. It starts right about now. I'm just saying, it's the same old movie with Tom Thibodeau.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. That's what really worries me as a Knicks fan is that they don't really use very many other people off the bench. And,
7 deep, pause.
Yeah, it's hey, that's not a bad number.
Hey, for some, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, no, they've got guys there that you could conceivably go to. I get it. Look, you put Cat, you put Brunson, you put Hart and OG and Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, those are the guys that you want out there. Mitchell Robinson isn't even back yet, but there are other guys on the bench that can contribute, and he's just running them into the ground. I love the starting five.
Right.
But it worries me. It really does. As much as I want to be here and I want to be confident about this Knicks squad, Knicks tape, they look good for the first half of the season. There is always that thought in the back of my mind. As you mentioned, OG is resting / hurt. I don't really know.
That man is hurt.
He's hurt.
Man is hurt.
Yeah. They paid him a lot of money. You would think that they'd like to get some of these guys a little bit of rest throughout the season or give them some time off, and let's play them 32 minutes a night, 33 minutes a night instead of 40 minutes a night.
Well, as you're talking, I'm bringing this up. So out of the top 10 of minutes played so far, how many are Knicks? Top 10 minutes played so far.
It's got to be all 5 of them.
It was trending that way at one point. Like
without
a month
OG?
ago, it was trending. Yeah, OG fell out of the top 10 with his rest over these last week and change. You have Bridges and Hart have played the most minutes of anybody in the entire league. Brunson is not that far behind. He is 6th in the league in most minutes played. And because they've been managing Cat a little bit, and Cat has actually missed a couple of games, Cat hasn't been up there. But at one point, I took a screenshot. It was like a month or two ago. It was like the whole starting 5 was in the top 6 of minutes played. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to end well. Come May, That's not going to end well. And I think it's, as much as I want to believe, like Cat
Do
is a
you wanna
double
believe?
machine.
You
I
hate the
want
Knicks.
I hate Nick fans. I don't hate the
Okay,
Nick team.
okay.
I hate
You
Nick
don't hate me
fans,
as a
but
Knicks
not
fan.
you though. You're a realistic Nick fan. Unfortunately, you are a minority in that niche. Most Nick fans are over the top. Most Nick fans think every year they're going to win the title, and they haven't won one in 50 plus years. So it's like, for me, it's like, well, until you come to the realization that your franchise is a poverty franchise, that your organization throughout various points of your life has been inept, then we can't have a real conversation. But me and you can have a real conversation because you are a rational Knicks fan. You know that, you just said, Thibodeau's going to play these guys, going to run them into the ground. You're going to get whatever you're going to get out of them until they get hurt. Like, we literally saw the blueprint last year. You had the bulk of this squad last year. Yeah, you didn't have Bridges and Towns, but the blueprint was the same, just like last year. Run these guys all day, and you're going to get a lot of victories in the regular season because a lot of teams don't play hard every night. Big surprise, but not a Tom Thibodeau team. A Tom Thibodeau team, they play balls to the wall 82 nights a year. That means you're going to beat teams that you shouldn't. That means you're going to beat teams when you're playing, your fourth game in 5 nights. You're going to get wins where you shouldn't because normally teams will take a rest and take their foot off the gas a little bit. But Thibodeau refuses to do that. He wants to squeeze every single W out of that roster. The problem of doing that between October and April is that when you get to May and June, your bodies are starting to fall down. Teams are load managing, and they still have to deal with injuries come May and June. This team does not load manage. You don't think they're going to have to deal with injuries come May, and if they're lucky into June? Like, that's kind of what it is for me. Like, Cat's going to put up numbers. Bodega Cat is a thing. He's playing out of his mind, right? Cool. Bridges has been okay. OG has been okay. Brunson of late has looked like Brunson from last year. He's picked and chose his spots. Josh Hart, I think, has been the most consistent Nick the entire season. But how's that going to play come April, come May? Do you really think you could beat the Celtics 4 out of 7? I think you could push them to 6, which is still a victory in itself. But is that really what you signed Cat for, trade of Cat for? Is to just lose to the Celtics in 6 conference finals? Like, yes, it's a step. You get to the conference finals, but at the end of it, you gave up all of the Knicks had so much draft capital and so much salary cap space, and they mortgaged it all to get Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby. And while those are great names in 2K, and you could build a 82-0 roster with those 3 in 2K, in real life, it's a little different. And the Celtics still have Tatum and Brown. They got Porzingis back. They still got Drew Holiday. And Derek White is a guy that could be a wild card. And then, oh, by the way, they got vets like Al Horford off the bench and Hauser. And like, there's Guy Pritchard. There's guys there that, to me, the Celtics are still the team to beat in the East. And I don't know if the Knicks have done enough. I was a little surprised they didn't do more at the trade deadline. I know they're limited on what they could do, but they've been able to swing big and land for the most part over the last 2 years. I thought they had another rabbit to pull out of the hat, but they didn't. I still don't think they're better than the Celtics. And that's why, to me, the East is kind of anticlimactic, because if the Celtics fall, like if they trick this off in the second round or something, then okay, now the East is wide open. But to me, as long as Tatum and Brown are good and Porzingis is healthy, I don't see a team in the East beating them.
Shame, shame, shame to Tom Thibodeau. He needs to learn from his past mistakes. I mean, did you? It's just frustrating. It's frustrating. Like, I love the regular season. I love the excitement around this team. It's fun to watch. But you're right. Inevitably, somebody's going to start breaking down, like we saw with Hart during the playoffs last year, with Brunson as well. Now, they obviously have more bodies this year, better bodies in there in that starting lineup. But
right,
if you're not willing to rely on more of those bench guys during the regular season, you're sure as shit not going to do it in the postseason.
No, and like they built this roster to compete against the Celtics. So you go get Towns because you don't have an answer for Porzingis if he's healthy, right? So, okay, you go get Towns. Now, Towns, he can put up numbers Can he play defense? That's always been a thing with him. Effort and defense. Scoring is a thing. He's a scoring machine. We know what he could do. Arguably, according to him, the best shooting big man in the history of the NBA. So, cool. Buckets is not a problem. If you need to go get 20 boards, can you do it? If you need to limit Porzingis and Al Horford and whoever else and lock them up, can you do it? If you play the Cavs, can you lock up? Can you get Jarrett Allen off the boards and not drop 30? We don't need you to drop 30. We need to stop Jarrett Allen from getting 16 boards. Can you go do that?
What about Mitch Rob?
I don't trust that.
That's kind of the X factor right there. Is that
but he's still a bench guy. You're not starting him. You can still
play him in big minutes if you need to.
Sure, but at what cost? Because to me, Mitch Rob has always shown you if he's upright and can get up and down the floor, he's really good. The problem is he's hardly upright. So you might have that in the first round, sure.
Well, here's my thinking is that and I get where you're going with this, but what you're hoping, again, as a delusional Knicks fan, what you're hoping is that, hey, look, he's got all this time off to come back from the injury. We don't need to rush him back right now. Let's just make sure he is fully healthy to go in the last 10 games or so of the season. Let him get his sea legs back under him in terms of playing time, maybe 15 games, whatever. 20 games, 15 games, whatever it may be. Let him get his sea legs back. All right, he is going to be. Let's hope that he's just, healthy Mitch Rob for the postseason push, because clearly we don't need him to finish top 3 in the East going into the postseason.
No. I think if you're telling me you want Mitch Rob to be your Al Horford in terms of, hey, be our first big off the bench, give us a spark, be able to get up and down the floor, rim run a little bit, set some screens. Okay, cool. That's fine. My thing is that the minute you depend on Mitch Rob, that's usually when he lets you down or his body lets you down. He's been really good when you're not expecting him to be anything.
And that's the thing that I love about this roster is they have so many other guys this year that
not bigs, though.
Well,
not
yeah,
bigs.
but that's what I'm saying. Like you have Cat though, who's a legit big, and he can just be the secondary big off the bench.
Right, but again, if Cat, so let's play this out against the Celtics, right? Yeah. All right, so you have Drew.
He's
Derek
been injured
White.
a bunch, has he not this year?
Drew, they've been load managed him a little bit. He's battled some injuries, but I think they know we just need him for April to June. Yeah. As long as he's good to be April to June, he's still Drew Holiday. He can still lock dudes up. He gives Brunson fits. Brunson can still get buckets, but he has to work extra hard for it. So you have Drew, who can take care of Brunson. You have Derek White, who can do things against Bridges, Anunoby, or Josh Hart if needed. Then you have the kind of combo of Tatum and Brown. Who's guarding Tatum and Brown? Okay, you could say I'm going to put OG on Tatum and Bridges on Brown.
Yeah,
all right, cool. Derek White now has to guard Josh Hart. Okay, cool. And we got Porzingis on Towns. To be quite honest, I think the Celtics have the advantage in damn near every one of those matchups outside of maybe Porzingis versus Towns. That to me is not good. Like if you're a Knicks fan,
then what else are you expecting them to do though? Like I thought they did about as good of a job as they could do getting guys in here to sort of try to compete with those guys because I know Bridges isn't as good of a scorer as Brown or Tatum, and same thing with Anunoby. But they're
go
better
right there though. I go right there. I think it's always good for the Knicks to fleece the Nets, right? Always a good thing to take their best player, but you didn't really fleece them. You had to fork over a lot of draft capital to get Bridges. Like the Knicks were heading into that OKC Sam Presti range or that Skemadam Danny Ainge range where they were amassing all these picks and you're like, oh, wow, they might actually be on to something. Because, again, if you can't convince people to come to New York, which it has now become a fact, you cannot convince a big-time free agent to come to New York. Okay, so then that means you got to trade for one because you're not going to be bad enough to draft one, so you got to trade for one. Okay, so let's amass all this capital and flip that for a top-tier player. I expect you to do that for Karl Anthony Towns. I didn't necessarily expect you to do that for Mikal Bridges. Not that Bridges is not good, but Bridges is not top 15, top 20. I don't even think he's top 25, but you gave up a significant amount to go get Bridges. And that to me is where I'm like, you were so close to having all the things play out the right way. You were so, and I get it. We needed to win now. It's a win now move. We're going to cash in these chips. We're going all in. I get it. But the Bridges piece, and we've seen his struggles with shooting the rock, and he's changed his form up, and he's had a lot of things this year not go the way that it did last year. Like, Bridges looked to be a guy that if you're on a bad team, he's going to cook. Now, how is he going to cook with a good team? We saw that when he was early in his career with Phoenix, but he was like a fourth option. And he was a rook or a very, very young player in this league. Then he went to Brooklyn, started going crazy because he was the only dude who was a bull in a china shop. Now you're with the Knicks. Now, how do you fit in? Brunson and Towns are your number one and number two option, flip-flop, however way you want to play that out, right? Now that means the best you could be is a third option. Well, then what if OG is cooking? And then what if Josh Hart's shot is falling that night? Now you're falling to a fourth or a fifth option. How does Mikal Bridges, who has now gotten the exposure of being a number one, or at worst a number two in Brooklyn, how does that translate to now I'm back being relegated to I might be number one option once a month, once or twice a month?
But that's what I love about this team is that, like, and on any given night, it could be any one of those guys. And you've seen him cook on multiple different occasions. And it just seems like Josh Hart, sort of walking triple-double-ish guy, obviously not what Russell Westbrook was, but he's been much better in his career than he's ever been in terms of
he is the third option.
Amassing rebounds and assists and points and things like that. He's not going to score you, 15 to 20 points a night, but Bridges is still third on this team in scoring with 18 points a game, and he's not even shooting that bad, 36% from downtown. So to me, I love the multiplicity of this team. Vocabulary word of the day, multiplicity of this team with the different options and the variability that they have with other guys to cook. Like last year, it was like, okay, it's Brunson, it's OG, DiVincenzo is a shooter. Mm-hmm. You're relying a lot on those guys because I can't remember the backup. What was the backup center's name that went to OKC?
Hartenstein.
Yes, when Hartenstein was there, is more of a defensive guy. He's not putting up points. Same thing with Mitch Rob. But now you've got so many different options that guys can be cooking. And you don't have to have Brunson cooking every single night. Like you said, like he was kind of picking and choosing his spots a little bit more because, hey, Cat can go off. And then Bridges can get hot. And then one night maybe OG's hot. Like it doesn't need to be every single night I'm going and I'm cooking. And we have to rely on one or two guys. Like every single guy in the starting lineup is capable of putting up 15, 20, 30, 40 points in a night.
And I think that's great for October to April. I think that's great.
But they also got guys who can play defense too. Like that's the other thing that I'm excited about.
Two guys who can play defense, Bridges and
two
OG.
more guys than they had
Josh
before.
Hart. Three guys. You have three guys who can play defense.
2 or 3 guys more than they had before. Like you didn't really have OG that much in the postseason last year. I would be excited to see. Again, I wouldn't anticipate. I'm not saying that I would expect the Knicks to beat the Celtics, but this team is giving them the best chance that they've had to be able to beat the Celtics. So then
tell me, as a Knicks fan, what is a successful season for this roster? You got to the second round last year. What is
I gotta at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals and push. If it's the Celtics or the Cavs or whomever, I gotta get to at least, like you said, 6 or 7 games.
Okay, six or 7 games, Eastern Conference Finals. That is a successful season. Okay,
yeah. Obviously you want get to the NBA Finals.
Sure.
But if you don't get at least to the Eastern Conference Finals and push the Celtics or the Cavs or whomever to 6 or 7 games and losing that, it would be a failure of this season, the way that they put this roster together. And if they do have those injuries once again, Tibbs has got to go. Like somebody's got to make a change there and realize, hey, we have the horses. We just have to utilize them better so they're healthy when it matters the most. It just seems like the Knicks are so enamored with trying to be good in the regular season because they haven't really been that good in the regular seasons in the past 2 or 3 decades, or really in the last 50 years, as you alluded to, since they haven't won a championship since 1973. I wasn't even a thought in anybody's mind at that point.
Nor me.
Either were you. I was going to say
something.
Yeah. Neither were you. So I think we're just so enamored with, oh my gosh, Tibbs has been incredible. He's got them to a whatever seed in the East going into the playoffs, and this, that, and the other thing. We get so enamored by the regular season, like you said, when all of these other teams are out there, the really good teams, trying to load manage and trying to give their guys rests and trying to build for the postseason. Like the really good teams in the NBA know, hey, it's not about the regular season. Like we're playing for the postseason.
So to the point of trying to figure out what the Celtics are in comparison to the Knicks, I'm looking it up here. The Celtics are top 5 in offensive and defensive rating, which is very similar to last year with them winning the championship.
Yeah, where are the Knicks at?
The Knicks right now are second in offensive rating, so good there. They're 20th in defensive rating, towards the bottom half of the league. Last year, they were top 10 in both categories. So by metrics, again, metrics are a tool to give you a piece of information. Not tell you all the information, but a piece. Top 10 in both categories last year, same energy in offense this year, a step back, a big step back. They were literally 10th last year in defensive rating, and they're 10 places worse this year. So better offensively, worse defensively. That is the Karl Anthony Towns experience.
Yeah, but then like again, I think that's where you're again. I know that putting your money on the Mitchell Robinson card
That's asking a lot of him, G.
is a risky bet.
Yeah,
It is.
It is.
But again,
It really is.
I don't think you're asking a ton. Like again, it's not like you have shit at center and you're just like, Mitch, we need you to come in and be the savior. It's not, hey, so much we need you to be the savior, but we need you to come in and provide that presence down low, which Hartenstein was able to do, that grit, that toughness, that rim protection, the rebounding. Mitch Rob is a really good rebounder and a really good rim protector as well. So you play him 20 to 25 minutes a night, and I think the Knicks defense shoots up a bit. Obviously, OG's got to get back and get healthy because without him, it ain't the same.
Mhm.
Bridges is incredibly long. You mentioned Josh Hart is scrappy, but obviously Brunson isn't quite a turnstile, but he's not also, he's not putting fear in anybody's heart from a defensive standpoint. Right. But that's the trade-off you get for bringing in a guy like Karl Anthony Towns and two guys that are really good scorers in this league with Brunson and Cat. So
are you more okay, so let me pivot my question. Are you obviously you're more concerned about the Celtics than the Cavs, right? But how do you feel about a potential matchup with the Cavs?
I feel like I've been there and I've done that with the Cavs, and I'm not as scared of them as I am when it comes to the Boston Celtics. But don't get me wrong, the Cavs have been fantastic this year. You look at the backcourt with Mitchell and Garland, like those are two guys that are legit options. And then Evan Mobley, I really think is currently coming to his own. I really like him a lot just as a player in general. Obviously, he can score, he can rebound the basketball, he can defend the rim, he can do a lot of different things. Then obviously you trade for a guy like DeAndre Hunter, who you and I have had many conversations about DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah.
So I am not putting him in that category that I'm like, ooh, I'm really concerned about a guy like DeAndre Hunter from a defensive standpoint or an offensive standpoint. Yeah. Upgrade over who?
Karis LeVert.
Upgrade
over Karis LeVert at this point in his career.
Yeah, exactly. So look, you put the Knicks starting 5 against the Cavs starting 5. Again, the firepower comes from different places in these teams, sort of. So it would be an interesting matchup. But you mentioned Jared Allen is a really good piece there, along with Evan Mobley. You get Mitchell Robinson back, that gives you something where you could, compete against them in a standpoint from down low.
I'm of the belief that you need Mitchell Robinson more for a matchup with the Cavs than the Celtics.
100%. I would agree with that.
The fact that they could have two guys that are 6'11" in their paint every game, and while Josh Hart has been really, I said earlier, I think it's been the most consistent Knick the entire year. At some point, that 6'4" shit is gonna just get exposed. Like 6'11" is 6'11", and it's cool that he could box out guys and he could get double doubles and sometimes triple doubles, and he could get 15, sometimes 20 boards. That's great. I don't know if he's doing that in a big spot in the big time playoff game, like on the road, down 3-1. I don't know if Josh Hart's going to go out there and get you 20 boards against Mobley and Jared Allen. I would not put a lot of money on that.
No, I wouldn't either. And Precious Achiuwa also is not a guy that I'm super excited about having to throw against those guys as well. I love Precious. He can come up with mentioned
for a reason.
Exactly. But again, he's a guy off the bench that, like, along with, campaign, like, you should be able to rely upon a little bit. but they
Sure,
just
in spots. I think
yeah.
again, and I think that's what you like you said, that's what you want from Mitch. And I think that's not asking a lot, right? It's still just a roll of the dice because the few times you've needed him and you've depended on him, he's let you down or his body has let you down. So I think that's all it is for me. It's not that if he's out there, can he be effective? The answer is yes, because he knows what he's there to do. He doesn't try to go out there and play outside of himself. The key is, can his body hold up over a 7-game series for multiple rounds? Not just like if you just want to hold him until the second round and then hope you can ride that for three series if you get to the finals, cool. But my whole thing is, if he plays more than 15 minutes, I think you're rolling the dice. And that shouldn't be the case if you're trying to win the NBA championship, but here we are. Like this is the bet that you've made. You're depending on a backup big that needs to give you 15 plus minutes, and his 15 plus minutes have to be a plus every time he's out there because he's very limited offensively. So if he's not getting boards and impacting defense, he's a black hole on offense because he can't do anything with the rock. Now you just have a guy that's just floating out there. So I think the Cavs are the more important matchup because him and Jarrett Allen potentially could cancel each other out. But if you're playing against the Celtics and now he's got to go out 30 feet and guard up Porzingis, that's a problem. Or even Al Horford now, who has developed into a 3-point shot as well. Yeah. That's a problem. So like that to me is where you need him, but you also need him to be extremely effective in the limited minutes he's going to be able to play.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the Western Conference. And there's a couple of teams that I want to spotlight a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on the Grizzlies, just because they're obviously a regional team here. You and I spent a lot of time talking about the Hawks and the Grizzlies on the radio show on the Word with G on ESPN Chattanooga, which is no longer. But give me your thoughts on the Grizzlies because they've had a really nice sort of bounce back at 36-18 in the first half. And Ja's back, Triple J's playing like an all-star that he is, and whatnot. And they've obviously had some good pieces there. Desmond Bane's still an effective scorer. And they've had some younger guys step up like Santi Aldama and Scottie Pippen Jr.'s played some minutes here and there. Zach Edey, the big, has stepped in and given you a little something as well. So give me your thoughts on the Grizz and where they stand right now. Just from your scoff, it doesn't seem like you truly believe in them.
It's a very difficult team to analyze because health has been a huge problem, and getting that core group together for an extended run has been spotty. Going into the rebirth of Ja Morant, and he also teased that he might do the dunk contest next year. I'll believe it when I see it. Is he ever going to get to be a real point guard? Probably not. But is his apex Derrick Rose? Potentially. And I think what you want to see from him is a more mature game. Like after Derrick Rose got hurt and he came back, he had to adjust his game, do more jump shots, get more floaters. He couldn't finish at the rim with the same ferocity. Now, Ja's not at that point yet, but I would love for him to develop that game like he's at that point because I think that will extend the prime of his career longer out. And we've seen it in flashes, but he's been battling through some injuries. They've also low-key been load managing him as well. So you haven't really seen, I think, Ja with like pin your ears back and just go. I don't think we've seen that for an extended period of time this season with the Grizzlies. But like you mentioned, I do like Aldama. I think he's been a really solid piece. I was expecting more from Zach Edey, to be quite honest. I was a big Zach Edey guy. I really felt like they kind of snuck up and got him. Not that he's a steal, but like I felt like he could be a more useful piece. I don't know if he's figured it out yet, and it is year one, and it's only been half a year or maybe 2/3 of a year in terms of how many games they've played, but he hasn't been as impactful as I thought he would be so far. I think Aldama's kind of done what I thought he was going to be able to do. Triple J, I think is the big thing here. Me and you've been talking about this for years. It feels like, is he going to take that next step? Like we just talked about with Evan Mobley taking a step and becoming that guy that, yes, he's good defensively, but can you now go be a bucket? And Evan Mobley has decided, I'm now going to go be a bucket and I'm going to be one of the better premier defensive bigs in the league. We're seeing glimpses of that from Triple J, but it's still just glimpses. And I think that, to me, will ultimately hold the Grizzlies back. Until that switch gets turned on and stays on for Triple J, to where I'm going to be a double-double guy and I'm going to lock up the other team's best big every night. That's what Evan Mobley is going out to do. Now, he might not get there every night, but the effort is there every single night. And I'm not saying the effort's not there with Triple J, but the results aren't there every night, to where I'm going to go out there and be a double-double, and I'm going to go lock up the other team's best big. I see it at times. I think he plays up to competition at times, but then there's those other games where you're not facing the top-tier big, where he just kind of lets other guys just get their shit off. And I'm like, well, why aren't you boxing that guy out? Like, you're good, right? Like, you're supposed to be the best big on the floor, right? Play like it. Every single night, play like you're the best big on the floor. Even nights when you're actually not the best big, play like or act like you're the best big on the floor. I think that's always going to be the cap on his ceiling, is when he walks out on that court, no matter who's on the other end, does he think he's going to go get a body tonight? And not off the court, on the court. Is he going to go catch a body on the court? Does he have that type of energy when he goes out to the floor? And I think that, to me, I'm still waiting to see that. And I know that seems like not the most in-depth, hardcore, nerd, metric-based analytics, but watching basketball the way that I do, and G can attest to this, I use metrics for what they're useful for, but I'm way more team eye test than just studying and just giving me a calculator and trying to figure out effective field goal percentage and all that type of stuff. Like, I'm watching the player when he plays the game, and not just when he has the ball, when he doesn't have the ball, when he's on the bench, when he's setting a screen. Is he setting hard screens, or is it just that, cursory, I'm going to just stick my hip out a little bit and do it? Like, no. Are you setting hard screens? Are you diving to the rim? Like, those little things let me know where your energy level is. And at times when it comes with Triple J, I feel as though he thinks he's the best big on the court, even when it's glaring that he is.
I love Triple J, but you're right. There's a lot of time where I feel like he could be better, and you're hoping
he's averaging 6 rebounds.
I know, that's not great.
6?
It's not great.
Come on.
No, it's not great, but he's also a guy who's really good defensively, where he's averaging over a steal a game and a block and a half a game. So, like, there are other things that he can do, but with being as big and as long as athletic that he is, you would assume that he'd be up around 9, 10, 11, 12 rebounds a game.
And to piggyback off of that, right? Okay, he's averaging 6 boards a game. Then somebody else should be getting like 10, 11, because you could go to every roster and there's somebody averaging double-digit boards or damn near right on the edge of it. We're talking about Zach Edey with 7.5 boards a game. That's the highest on the squad.
That's the leader.
That should not be the case. So, yeah, you can give me, well, the team rebounds, because Bane rebounds and Ja rebounds. No. If you want to get up and down and create that helter-skelter pace and take advantage of a guy like Ja, who has that speed and that athleticism, then you need your bigs to corral the rock and get those outlet passes, Kevin Love style, and just boom, let's start that break, that automatic break, and get it going. And if you don't have that, that's a problem. And I think that, to me, is where I don't like to poke holes in guys' games, but if you're asking me how far can this Grizzly team go or how have they looked, I think when everything is rolling, they look like a top-tier team in the West, and their record says that they are a top-tier team. However, if the Nuggets figure it out, do I think the Nuggets can take out the Grizz? Yes. If this Lake Show thing, whether they find a big or not, can they go and upset the Grizz? I think so. So that's kind of where it is. I don't think they can run with OKC. They can't run with OKC. I don't think they have a chance against OKC. There's certain things, and then you come into defense. That's where you look at Ja and even Bane and Marcus Smart, who's now relegated to a cheerleader status. It feels like he's not really getting a lot of run, and when he does get a run, he doesn't look effective. Who's going to stop SGA? It ain't Desmond Bane. It damn sure ain't Ja. Who's going to stop Jalen Williams? How are they going to body Chet? Now, Triple J could bang with Chet a little bit, but Chet's very skilled offensively. And he likes to get a little nasty down low. I don't see that in Triple J. Maybe in Aldama, maybe. But like, again, when we're forecasting and looking at projected lineups and how these strategies play out and these depth charts play out, if I'm Memphis, I don't want to see OKC. If I'm Memphis, I don't want to see Denver. I don't mind seeing Houston. I don't mind even seeing the Clippers, even with Kawhi back and almost looking like board man. I don't mind any of those other teams. I just don't want to see OKC at Denver if I'm Memphis. All
right, you alluded to the Lakers, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about obviously the trade and bringing in Luka Doncic, which was obviously a big surprise. Yeah. But give me your thoughts on that trade and how it, I guess, advances the Lakers right now and for years to come.
So let's start with years to come. So they have their succession plan, right? So now we know who they're going to hand the keys to whenever LeBron decides to walk away. Cool. Why they couldn't do that with Anthony Davis? It's not my call. Now, Anthony Davis is not a star in that like he's not a transcendent star. So I understand choosing Luka over AD, right? For the here and now, that Mark Williams trade is going to be a thing. Mark Williams is kind of like Mitch Robb, where when he's healthy, he's productive, but he's rarely healthy. Alex Len is trash. So to go from Mark Williams, where you're wishing upon a star, like I see it, but it really depends on if he's healthy. If he's healthy, yes, he's going to be a rim running machine. He's going to block shots. He's going to be on the glass. It's going to be a thing. To have that trade rescinded for whatever reason, both sides are bickering. Silver has been allegedly telling the Hornets, fall back, do not try to pursue this. It's going to get nasty. It involves the Lakers. We know how this league is when it comes to the Lakers. It's going to get nasty. Don't do it. Mark Williams, I think, would have been really low-key, sneakily effective. Alex Len, you're LeBron, you're Rich Paul, you're Rob Pelinka, you're Jeannie Buss. You are able to steal Luka Doncic, and you now have a window, a very small window, albeit a window, and you can't get a big better than Alex Len. There's nobody in the G League. There's nobody overseas. There's nobody that, you could just go sign up. There's nobody in the big three. Like there's nobody in Costa Rica, Puerto Rico. There's no Alex Len is the best that the Lakers could do, that Clutch Sports, Rich Paul, and LeBron could do. Boogie's out here begging for a gig. Dwight Howard's over here begging for a gig.
Do you realistically think both of those guys right now are better than Alex Len?
I certainly think Dwight Howard is. Boogie.
Yeah, I was going to say Boogie.
Boogie lost a lot of athleticism. But I think in terms of if you just need a guy with size who knows how to set screens, can hit a three, and can bang in the post, that's Boogie he'll be 80 years old and he can still bang in the post and grab boards. Like that's just who that man was born to be. Alex Len, well shit, you're a Connecticut guy. You remember Travis Knight?
Name sounds familiar.
UConn legend. Had a cup of tea in the NBA, played for the Bulls, and I think he also played for the Lakers. 6'11", he could have been a footer, but just a guy that looks the part, can grab boards occasionally, can hit the jump shot occasionally. But again, much like Mitch Robb, when you depended on Travis Knight, that's when it was a problem. You wanted Travis Knight to be the surprise. Oh, he got a double-double. Oh, that was shocking. Okay, cool. That's great. That's icing. But when it's like, no, we need Travis Knight to give us a double-double. Oh, no, you're not getting nowhere close to that. You're just not going to get. And that's what Alex Len is. Like, he'll sneak up and give you a double-double or give you a 9 and 8 and maybe a block or two. But then when you need him to go give you that same stat line, he's going to give you 3 and 4 and foul out. And he's not a rim runner, and he's not a defensive presence. So let me understand this. You had Anthony Davis, who is a walking decoy candidate. Every year he's standing up and breathing. And you flipped that for Luka. Cool. Then you made the stealth deal on the side to go get Mark Williams, who, albeit not a household name for those that know in and around the league, he's a guy that's a stat stuffer, that is a defensive player, and can also rim run. So now you have a lob option for Bron and Luka. Great. Now that deal falls through. And the response is Alex Len, who doesn't do any of those things. He's not a defensive player. He showed that in his one game so far, where he got bullied and dunked on early and often. And he can't rim run. And he's not a good screen setter. And he doesn't have a three ball. So what exactly are you doing by signing Alex Len? So again, I ask you, and the proverbial you, not you, but like, what was the thought process in going out and signing Alex Len? I think they rushed because it's like, well, if this Mark Williams thing doesn't go, there's no other bigs available. Well, let's hold on. Why not Dwight Howard? It worked in the bubble, and he wanted to come back the year after the bubble, but his agent got funny with the paperwork, and Dwight didn't sign the paperwork in time, and then he had to go to Philly. But he wanted to spin it back. He wanted to spin the block. He wanted to run it back. What's wrong with Dwight Howard? For again, we're talking about February to June. It's only a handful of months. I know he's a malcontent, he's a headache, he's a lot. But Bron is Bron, right? He's got that. He handled it in the bubble. He can't handle Dwight now. So to me, it's like Dwight Howard would have been the obvious move to me, not Alex Len. Yes, Dwight is older. Yes, you could argue Alex Len has a lot more left in the tank for whatever that means, as opposed to Dwight Howard. But you need defense because you lost that with AD. You need rim running. You lost that with AD. You need someone who could dump the ball to on the block and at least be a presence. You lost that with AD. You're getting none of that with Alex Len. Absolutely zero of that with Alex Len. So that's going to be the biggest bugaboo, because now who's guarding Jokic? You're going to have to put LeBron on Jokic.
What about Rui Hachimura?
He's 6'8".
He's got some size still.
He's 6'8". Like, you're talking about,
LeBron
Jackson Hayes.
6'9"?
You're talking about Jackson Hayes going to have to guard Nikola Jokic. Alex Len and Jackson Hayes are going to be guarding Nikola Jokic potentially.
I mean, let's be honest. There's really no good options out here. I'm looking at the NBA free agents right now, and there's not a lot out there when it comes to centers. Like, there's a lot of bad names.
Give me some names.
Okay, let's see.
Bismack Biyombo just got re-signed. You could have had the Mac. Return of the Mac. I was down for that.
Yep, you could have had that. Armando Bacot is currently a free agent.
Not doing that.
Mo Bamba.
I'm not mad at that. He was a Laker, but Bron might not have liked what he saw in person, so I could see that not being a thing. But I would rather have Mo Bamba than Alex Len.
Davis Bertans.
He's a big.
6'10".
He's better than Alex Len.
He's 32.
He's
Bertans
better than Alex Len.
Is better than Alex Len.
Yeah.
Len's just got more size. Like, he's more of like a down low presence. Like, Bertans isn't really a down low presence. He's more of a shooter.
Yeah. But I would rather take that.
Yeah. Let's see. You've got,
because again, if you're not giving me the size, at least give me something offensively. At least if you're not going to be a defensive rim running guy, okay, then can you shoot? No. At least we know Bertans could do that.
Yeah. You've got Tony Bradley, used to be on the Hawks.
Nah.
Moses Brown used to be on Indiana. He's 7'2".
Hey, Taco Fall is out there somewhere. Taco Fall would have been a better addition than Alex Len.
God, he's so
7'5". Yeah, I mean, look, the Spurs low key could be a playoff team.
They could.
Who's going to guard Wemby? Or let's be real. If you're the Lakers, right? You're looking at teams like Sacramento. They got Sabonis. Who's going to guard him? You're looking at the Clippers. Zubac, the one that the Lakers gave away. Zubac is a double-double machine. If anyone that's out here is a betting person, if you want to get a nice little easy bet, at least a couple times a week, sprinkle a little something on Zubac to get a double-double. It's likely to hit 70% of the time. He's that much of a machine. You got Houston with Sengun. He is a big problem in the paint. He be bully balling people as well. So, like, there's some sides in the West, and you're countering that by adding Alex Len and sticking with Jackson Hayes.
How do you feel about a 36-year-old Danilo Gallinari?
I mean, he's a big only in height.
Yeah.
Um,
Slow as shit.
slow as shit, and I would hope he could still shoot.
That's what you're hoping for.
If he
Again,
could
you
still
want
shoot,
that.
he could be my Maxi Kleber, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like Kleba can play a little defense, though. He's younger.
He tries. He can't play defense, but he tries. That effort is there.
It is. But Gallo looks like he's moving in slow motion
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
no, I'm telling you. To me, it's you're either looking at Dwight, you're looking at Boogie. I would have entertained some other bigs.
Frank
like
Kaminsky's out there.
Frank the Tank.
Frank the Tank, 7 foot, 31 years old.
I mean, if you're telling me the best big available is Alex Len, I am challenging your scouting department. Now, if you're telling me the best big that we can sign today and get him to show up and be ready and in shape and ready to go within a night or two is Alex Len, that's a different conversation because I'm sure Boogie would have liked time to get in shape. I'm sure Dwight will probably say he's in shape, but he might not be in NBA game shape, right? So he would need a little bit of time. So if you're telling me, hey, we just need a warm body, a big that can play tomorrow night, and the best we could find is Alex Len, I'm willing to fall back on that. But if you're telling me, no, we really feel Alex Len could be a piece for the rest of the season as that big, that to me is where I have tremendous amounts of pushback.
No, you got you could dust off a 36-year-old Robin Lopez, Thon Maker.
Sure. I'm not mad at Robin Lopez. Again, I would enjoy Robin Lopez.
Boban
Yeah.
Marjanovic.
Boban, I mean, slower than Alex Len, which isn't helpful. But at least he knows how to use his size, but he's not getting dunked on like Alex Len the other night. Alex Len was
Hell,
getting dunked
JaVale
on.
McGee's out there, former Laker great.
God damn, how old is he now? Is he 40?
He's 37.
Pushing 40. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going JaVale. I mean, at least, again, JaVale McGee is better than Alex Len right now.
Yeah, I would think so. He can give you more.
Trusting in Alex Len, I think, will be the detriment of the Lakers season. Because, like, again, it's not like we got AD and we got Alex Len backing them up. Like, no, you have Jackson Hayes and Alex Len is the backup, or vice versa. We're starting Alex Len, and then the backup to that is even worse in Jackson Hayes.
Mike Muscala,
It's a shooter.
6'10", 33 years old, been in the league 11 years.
I think there's a lot of bigs that the Lakers could have figured it out with. I think there's a lot of options that they just skip right past, and whether that's Clutch or whether that's Pelinka just needed a warm body in Staples ASAP, or sorry, Crypto ASAP. I don't know. Like, to me, that was a really reach. That was a big reach.
So what if behind the scenes they are kind of saying, hey, look, there's somebody we want, whether it's Boogie, whether it's Dwight, whether it's one of these other bunch of guys that we named. Hey, we're going to give you a little time to get in shape here. We're going to sign Alex Len because, yeah, he is the most capable warm body right now, but you're really the big that we want. Get your ass in shape, and then we will sign you from there. Do you think that could be a possibility down the road for the Lakers here in the second half?
I think if you're talking DeMarcus Cousins or Dwight Howard, maybe, but Dwight is live streaming on TikTok. So if he's like secretly doing, 2-a-days to get in shape and then live streaming on TikTok, yeah, maybe. But like, to me, I think Dwight Howard is ready to play right now. Or I would be more willing to throw Dwight out there and let him play himself into shape than telling me I just need a warm body, and the best warm body I can find is Alex Len. Like, I'd rather fail with Dwight Howard being, 90% in shape as opposed to Alex Len being 100% and getting dunked on and yammed on left and right and being bullied and abused.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here with the Lakers. How realistic of a shot? I know you mentioned that that's sort of going to be their undoing in terms of a big with that Mark Williams trade falling through. What is the ceiling for the Lakers now with how they're currently constructed with Luka and LeBron, and they obviously the keep don't connect, and Austin Reeves can score and all of that?
Yeah, they've kind of lucked into a big three, one of the most unorthodox big threes, and we know how LeBron is about having a big three. The big three of Luka, Reeves, and LeBron, it doesn't sound like a big three, but in actuality, it kind of is, because like we saw the other night where Reeves put up like a 40 piece, and he's worked his way into being a bucket. So to have LeBron, who needs shooters and needs dynamic playmakers around him, and you add that in Luka, assuming Luka, one, is healthy, and two, will show you effort. And I think that's the piece that Mavericks fans are not looking at. And I know fandom is a mental illness, and there's been no greater example of that than the way that the Dallas Maverick fan base has reacted to this trade. Luka Doncic, when he's right, is a top 3 player in the entire league, damn near the best player in the league. However, more times than not, he doesn't give you the effort, and he's out of shape. And there's some off the field real questions there, like when they made it to the conference finals and he's chilling in the back and he's drinking a brew with his dad, and Michael Finley has to casually walk by and take the beer out of his hand and just quietly walk away because, dog, we just got to the NBA finals and you're sitting here chugging beers and you're not even in shape. So again, as much as the Maverick fan base is just looking at the results, well, Luka is this, he's that, he's the face of the franchise, he's this, he's like, yes to all those things, but let's not ignore the other stuff. Let's not ignore the warts. Like that frog has some warts on it. Like, let's not ignore that, right? But now in LA though, LeBron could cover up some of those warts. LeBron might put Luka Doncic in a hyperbaric chamber and teach him how to get his body right. LeBron might teach him how to go down to that South Beach, Miami clinic and get the PE. Let me not.
What?
Sorry.
What was that?
Yeah, sorry. So there's a lot there to like when it comes to the Lake Show. Austin Reeves is a bucket. They're very much wing heavy now, right? Because they have no size, clearly. That could actually get them a long way in the West, because a lot of the teams in the West are built more traditionally, but you have your guard, you have your wings, your small wing and your big wing, and you have a traditional big. The Lakers are rolling out here with a 6'8" point guard, a 6'9" power forward that still thinks he's the point guard, and now we got Austin Reeves, who's 6'4", who's got some point guard ability in him as well. So now either one of those three can bring the rock up and orchestrate and can cook. That is a dynamic offense. Like JJ Redick, low-key has to be salivating, because he talks he had on that podcast, and still even in his post-game press conferences and stuff, he talks about motion and putting guys in space, and he wants to draw up all this stuff. Well, now you got 3 guys who can all handle the rock, score it, pass it, and get boards. The world is your oyster, JJ Redick. Go out there and create a motion style offense with those 3 dudes, and let me see something. Because what I saw with LeBron and AD, with a small big 3 with Reeves as the third, I wasn't that impressed with the offense. I wasn't that impressed with the sets. Luka is a different dynamic. Now let me see you cook up something. All that fancy shit you were doing on the pod with LeBron, you're drawing up stuff. Okay, let me see some of that now, because now you have a real window to take advantage of having a guy who still feels like he's the best player in the league, and a guy that when he's healthy and not chugging beers off the court could be the best player in the league, and a guy that has a humongous chip on his shoulder because he's undrafted, and Austin Reeves, who could drop 40 pieces when he wants. Now let me see you create a system that's dynamic. So I think the Lake Show have a real opportunity here to steal a berth into the finals. I don't know if they could win a championship. I don't think they could beat Boston. I don't know if there's a team standing right now that can beat the Boston Celtics 4 out of 6. But in terms of getting to the finals, I think the Lakers have a legitimate chance, because they had a good record even with LeBron missing some time, AD missing some time, and Reeves missing some time. They were still like, they're the 5th seed right now. So the team's not bad. It's just, well, how far can this team go? And again, everything is about matchups. You know this, Jay, as a guy that knows ball. It's about matchups. Right now, they're playing Houston. If it was the first round, I like their chances there. However, if the Nuggets fall back and they swap seeds, and now Denver's the 4th seed and the Lakers are 5, I hate that matchup if I'm the Lakers. I don't know if they get out the first round if it's the 4-5 against the Nuggets. So that's why, to me, it's like, okay, figure out to get the Luka thing going, but then it's all about who to avoid. Stay the hell away from Denver. if you're the Lakers. Memphis, like I spoke about, I think the Lakers can handle Memphis. I would want to stay right by the Houston Rockets. Wherever they at, cozy right up next to them.
That's
Just
right.
have Valentine's Day cozy right up next to them. Put on some of that Sade and make sure you're still very close with Ime Udoka, who definitely knows something about some Sade. Stay real close to the Houston Rockets.
Sam Dusenbury Jr. This has been fun, man. I've really enjoyed the NBA conversation. I did want to get into a little NFL, but we're pushing 2 hours here, so I think we'll cut it here. We did a lot of Falcons talk with my man Will McFadden, but it's been great.
Some of that.
Yeah, it's been good to get back into it a little bit. I'm feeling the Word with G vibes. We're reminiscing here.
I'll just say this. My cousin will hate me if I didn't say this on your platform, especially when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. Do the Atlanta Falcons rue the day that they passed on Jalen Carter?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That was for you, Corey.
Absolutely. Sam, it's been fun, man. Thanks for jumping on here, spending some time with us here on the Chatted Up Sports platform on the Word with G. And anytime you wanted me to repay the favor, jumping on the CMD podcast, the Timeline T, if you want to do a little bit of that, we can make that happen. I always love to get a chance to see you popping up on the Timeline T. Whenever I see that, last time I popped in, we were on the bus to Florida, and I was like, oh shit, okay, let's pop by. Let's check it out.
He was active in the chat. That was cool.
I always like to be active in the chat whenever they're there, because I know as a host, I know as somebody who's done what you're doing, it is so important, it's so vital, and it makes the show that much better if you have listener-viewer interaction with what you're talking about.
It's absolutely huge, because you could definitely run out of gas. You could definitely just run out of gas. We could just talking, and then there's nothing. You have nothing to riff off of, nothing to respond to. So no, you being in the chat, the following that I've built on Timeline T has been really, really fun to see. Familiar faces pull up and just tap in and just say that they're here, they're watching, and sometimes even that could just be a boost of people confirming that they're there, they're watching. They may not be able to be active in the chat, but they're letting you know that they're there to keep going, to talk your shit. That's the stuff that keeps me going. So definitely appreciate it. Definitely want to get you on there. And then if we could ever get the technology together, we could get the whole Chatted Up squad to pull up. That would definitely be a nice little mashup I would like to see.
That would be dope if we had a little crossover show for sure. Talk a lot of talk, and there'd be a lot of good debate, a lot of good conversation in that situation. Go follow him up on YouTube as well. Give him a subscribe there at TheSamD, TheeSamD. Same thing on Twitter, Instagram, the whole thing. TheSamD podcast as well up on Twitter, and of course check him out wherever you get your podcasts as well at TheSamD podcast. And I did just see this. James Wiseman, also still a free agent right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Why not? I mean, he should never been a Warrior. So yeah, he's definitely he can run, play defense. That low key might have been the one.
23 years old still. Nobody taking a shot on him, but
Alex Len.
I mean, you just go look at his stats, man. Obviously, I've watched him play, and I know he's nothing special, but you just go look at his stats, and it's just like, blech.
Bruh, why? Blech. Again, Rich Paul, Clutch Sports, and LeBron. That's the best y'all can. Cool.
Yeah, it's tough. 5 stars, nothing less. Make sure you tell a friend. The Sam D podcast, Timeline T, all the good stuff there's from Sam. Man, I really appreciate the time. Thanks for hanging out with us for a while here. I wasn't sure how long we were going to go, but it always seems to be a little bit longer than we think it's going to be.
Me and you always go off script because we're actually friends in real life. So to talking with your friend about anything can always just veer in many different directions. But always a good conversation chopping up with you, G.
Hey, make sure you follow us on social media as well at Chatted Up Sports, wherever you get your podcasts. Again, 5 stars, nothing less. Make sure you tell a friend, to tell their mom, to tell their sister and brothers and cousins and all that good stuff.
Especially their sister.
Obviously, especially the sisters and maybe some of the moms as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And now that we have the video elements, I mean, especially when you and I are on here,
come on, ladies. You can, you see it. Stop playing.
Pull up.
DMs are open. Well, maybe not mine, but you can at least shoot it. I'll read it.
Maybe not mine as well.
Hey, let's go. Okay. Ladies, you missed your shot.
Yeah.
Missed your shot.
The shot has been missed. Anyways, we will discuss that at a later time. I will have to tell you about that off the air. Sam, appreciate it as always, man. Have a great week, and it's always good to see your face.
Thank you, brother. Always appreciate it.